The rain had begun without warning, streaking Lagos in sheets of cold water that mirrored the chaos in my own mind. I had just stepped out of my private jet, the hum of the engine still vibrating in my chest, when my assistant, Kemi, tugged at my sleeve with a worried frown. "Sir, you shouldn't be walking alone here," she said, glancing at the puddles forming on the street. "This isn't like your office, it's the city." I waved her off. "I need air, Kemi. I've been cooped up in boardrooms for 3 days. I need clarity." That's when I saw her. A girl no older than 23, huddled under a torn cardboard box beside the corner cafe. Her hair clung to her face from the rain and her clothes, well, they were practically rags. My first instinct was disgust. My second was curiosity. Something about her eyes, large, dark, unyielding, pierced right through my well-armored soul. She wasn't begging, she wasn't even looking at me. She was simply enduring. I wanted to walk away to get into the safety of my sleek black car, but my feet betrayed me. I found myself standing in the rain, staring at her, feeling the absurdly human tug of concern. "Do you need help?" My voice was strange, almost hesitant. I'm used to commanding rooms, negotiating million-dollar deals, not asking a stranger if they want shelter. She looked up at me, startled, as if my words were some foreign language she didn't understand. Then she shook her head, her lips pressing into a thin, bitter line. "I'm fine," she said. There was pride in her voice, stubbornness, a shield I had not expected. I frowned. "Fine. She's out here in the rain, soaked to the bone. Fine." I reached into my pocket, fishing out a crisp note, intending to offer it. But as soon as she saw it, her eyes narrowed. She shook her head again, more violently this time. "No money," she spat. "I don't need charity." I froze. The city, the rain, my power, my billions, it all seemed ridiculous in comparison to the defiance of this girl. She was beautiful in a way I had never understood. Not the kind of beauty you see on magazine covers. No. Her beauty was raw, unpolished, dangerous even. The next moment, a man appeared from the alley behind her, shouting, "Move, street rat." He shoved her roughly and she stumbled. I felt something inside me snap. Without thinking, I stepped forward, grabbed his arm and twisted. "Leave her alone," I said, my voice low and firm. The man stared at me, shock and fear battling on his face, before he fled into the rain-soaked street. The girl stared at me wide-eyed. For a moment I thought she might run, but she didn't. She just stared. "I'm not used to anyone," she murmured, almost to herself. I blinked. "Used to anyone?" She shook her head. "People like you don't care about people like me." I laughed, a dry, humorless laugh. "I don't," I admitted. "I've never believed in love or kindness or any of that." Her eyes softened ever so slightly, but there was still a wariness there, a question. "Oh, Adesela," she said finally, her voice breaking the rhythm of the rain. "I'm Obinna," I said, extending my hand, though I doubted she would take it. She didn't. But she didn't run away either. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about her, the fire in her eyes, the sharpness in her voice, the way she hadn't begged, hadn't broken down. I realized something I had never admitted. I was fascinated. And fascination, I would soon learn, is a dangerous first step toward something far more consuming, love. The next morning, Lagos woke in a haze of heat and chaos, as if the city itself hadn't slept. But I hadn't slept either. My mind was a storm, replaying the image of Adesela huddled under that cardboard box, soaked and defiant. Every time I tried to focus on my meetings, her face cut through the boardroom haze like a blade. I called Kemi first thing. "Find out everything you can about her," I instructed, trying to sound casual, though my chest was tight. "Where she stays, what she does, her family, if she even has one." Kemi hesitated. "Sir, are you sure? She's just a street girl." "Do you?" "I need to know," I interrupted sharply. "And Kemi, do it quietly. I don't want her knowing I'm involved." By noon, the search had already yielded results. Adesela's story was grim but familiar. Abandoned by her parents as a child, bounced between relatives, then onto the streets by the age of 14. No education beyond primary school. She survived by selling vegetables, washing dishes, and occasionally doing small errands for neighborhood shops. Nothing glamorous, nothing worth noticing, except for the way she carried herself. I left the office without telling anyone where I was going. The penthouse, the meetings, the press, they all faded in importance. I needed to see her again. I found her near a busy intersection, balancing a crate of tomatoes on her hip while dodging cars and shouting vendors. Her hair was still damp from the previous night's rain, and her clothes were patched and frayed. She moved with a precision born of necessity, every gesture calculated, deliberate, nothing wasted. I watched her for a long moment, feeling a strange mix of admiration and guilt. Then, almost without thinking, I stepped forward. "Adesela," I called gently. She froze, her eyes scanning the crowd before they landed on me. For a heartbeat, her face hardened into suspicion. "You again?" she said, her voice guarded. "Yes," I admitted. I wanted to see if you were all right." She snorted, a short, humorless sound. "All right? You think I can just be all right out here? You don't know what it's like." "I know enough," I said, stepping closer, ignoring the curious stares from passers-by. "Enough to know that no one should have to endure this alone." Her eyes flared with defiance. "And what makes you different? You're rich, Obina. You sit in your penthouse, counting millions, while people like me, people who actually live in this city, struggle every day." Her words cut deeper than any insult, and yet I didn't retreat. "Maybe I am different," I said quietly. "Or maybe I'm just tired of pretending I'm not human." She studied me, and for a moment, I saw hesitation in her gaze. Vulnerability. But it didn't last long. She squared her shoulders. "I don't need your pity," she said. "I don't need your money. I survive on my own." I could feel the challenge in her words, the pride that had kept her alive all these years. And yet, I couldn't let her face danger alone. The moment stretched, and then disaster struck. A group of young men, faces twisted in cruel amusement, appeared from a nearby alley. One of them shoved her roughly, laughing. "Oi, street rat. Move out the way." Without thinking, I lunged, placing myself between her and the gang. "Leave her alone," I growled, feeling a surge of protective fury I hadn't experienced in years. The leader laughed, but the laugh faltered when he saw me, the expensive watch on my wrist, the aura of authority I didn't even have to try for. Who are you?" he stammered, clearly unsure. I didn't answer. I just grabbed his arm, twisted it sharply, and sent a clear message: "Back off." They hesitated, measuring me, then bolted, leaving her standing in the middle of the street, trembling but unharmed. I turned to her, and she was staring at me wide-eyed. You could have just walked away," she whispered. "And let them hurt you?" I said, my voice low. "I don't think so." She looked down, a mixture of fear and something else. Gratitude maybe, though she would never admit it. "I told you," she murmured, almost to herself. "People like you don't care." "Maybe not," I said softly. "But maybe some of us do." For a moment there was silence between us. The city roared around us, indifferent to our exchange. Then she surprised me. "Why are you really here?" she asked, her voice quieter now, less guarded. I hesitated. "I don't know," I admitted. I think I want to understand. How you survive. How you endure." Her eyes searched mine, skeptical, almost angry. "And what if I don't want to be understood?" "Then I'll have to try anyway," I said, and for the first time in my life I didn't feel the need to be commanding or in control. I just wanted to be near her. She shook her head, a half-smile tugging at her lips despite herself. "You're insane." "Maybe," I said, smiling back. "Or maybe I'm just finally awake." We didn't speak for the rest of the day. I hired a discreet driver to follow her from a distance, making sure she was safe. I watched her climb rooftops, cross crowded streets, and slip through alleys, a queen in her own kingdom of survival. Every moment I felt something stirring in me, something I hadn't felt since I was a boy, too scared to love, too scared to hope. That night I couldn't sleep. I poured a glass of whiskey, tried to focus on business plans, investments, acquisitions, but her face haunted me. That spark of defiance, that fire in her eyes, the way she had refused my charity. I realized it was not just fascination. It was something dangerous. I was falling in love. And I knew, deep in my chest, that this was only the beginning of a battle that neither of us would ever forget. The city had a rhythm that never let you rest, and I felt it pressing against my chest as I drove through Lagos in the quiet of the night. Every streetlight reflected off the wet asphalt, flickering like the memories I tried to suppress. But I couldn't escape one thought: Adesela. I had spent the morning reviewing what Kemi had dug up, her childhood, her struggles, her life on the streets. It was a patchwork of pain, betrayal, and survival. Yet, what struck me most wasn't the hardships she had endured, it was her unbreakable spirit. She wasn't a victim. She was a fighter. And she had no reason to let me in. But I needed to. I found her in a small, dimly lit cafe near the harbor, trying to earn a few naira washing dishes. She didn't see me at first, absorbed in her work, her hands trembling from exhaustion. I stood by the doorway watching. She was quiet, focused, and completely unaware that someone was watching her, willing to bend his entire life just to protect her. I cleared my throat. She jumped slightly, her eyes wide. "Obina?" she asked, her voice cautious. "Yes," I said, stepping closer. "I wanted to know more about you. About your past." She froze. Then she laughed, a short, sharp bark of disbelief. "You want to know about me? You don't even know me." "I know enough," I said. "Enough to see that you've been through hell. Enough to know you shouldn't have to face it alone." Her eyes softened, but only for a second. "You think throwing money at me will change anything?" "I'm not offering money," I said, lowering my voice. "I'm offering help, protection, understanding." She shook her head violently. "I don't need your help. I've survived this long on my own. You don't understand what it's like to have nothing, to be nothing, and yet keep moving forward every day." I felt a pang of guilt. How could I, a man who had never truly struggled, claim to understand her? And yet, I couldn't stop myself from trying. "I may never understand fully," I admitted, "but I want to try." She looked at me, searching my eyes for some hidden motive. Finally she spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "Why are you really doing this?" I hesitated. Because the truth was terrifying. Because if I admitted it, I would admit that my carefully constructed walls, my disbelief in love, my cynicism, my detachment, were crumbling. Because I care, I said, the words tasting foreign and dangerous on my tongue. Her expression shifted, surprise, disbelief, and something else I couldn't name. But before I could say more, the cafe door slammed open. A man I recognized from the street corner, one of the gang leaders, strode in, eyes scanning the room. He spotted Adesela immediately and sneered. Well, he said, his voice dripping with menace. "Look who's hiding in plain sight. Thought you could escape me, little street rat?" Adesela's face went pale, but she squared her shoulders, defiance flashing in her eyes. "I'm not afraid of you," she said, though I could hear the tremor in her voice. The man laughed, a cruel sound that bounced off the walls. "You should be." Before I could react, he lunged at her, grabbing her arm. My instincts kicked in. I moved faster than I had thought possible, pulling him off her with one swift motion. He stumbled, but his eyes were burning with rage. "You think you can protect her?" he spat. "She belongs to me." I stepped closer, closing the distance between us. "She belongs to no one," I said, voice cold and hard. "And if you touch her again, I swear." The threat hung in the air, and the man finally backed away, fury and fear battling on his face. He left, but the danger wasn't gone. Adesela sank to the floor, breathing hard, her small frame trembling. I knelt beside her, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "You're safe," I said softly. "For now." She looked up at me, eyes wide and glistening. You saved me again," she whispered. I felt an unexpected warmth at her words, a connection that was growing faster than I could control. "I told you," I said, voice low, "I care." She shook her head, struggling to stand. "You don't understand," she said. "People like you don't get it. You don't survive like this. You don't have to." "Maybe not," I admitted. "But maybe I want to. Maybe I want to survive, for you." Her eyes softened, and for the first time, I saw vulnerability behind the defiance. She wanted to resist, to fight, but she also wanted to be seen, for who she truly was, not what the world had made her. I offered her my hand. She hesitated, then slowly took it. "I can't stay with you," she said quietly. "I don't belong in your world." "Then I'll bring my world to yours," I said. "I'll make it safe for you." She looked at me, eyes searching mine, and finally she nodded, a fragile truce forming between us. That night, as I drove back to my penthouse, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't just fascinated by her anymore. I wasn't just drawn to her defiance or resilience. I was falling in love. And love, I knew, would demand more than money or protection. It would demand honesty, vulnerability, and courage, the very things I had spent my life avoiding. But for Adesela, I was willing to risk everything. The city skyline glittered with artificial light as I drove through Lagos, the streets buzzing with life, music, and the endless hum of commerce. But all I could think about was Adesela. She had agreed, reluctantly, to come with me tonight to my penthouse. I wasn't sure whether to feel victorious or anxious. Victory because she trusted me enough to step into my world. Anxiety because my world was one she had never known, and it terrified me to think of exposing her to it. When we arrived, the doorman paused, scanning her from head to toe. Adesela, in her patched blouse and skirt, looked completely out of place in my building of marble floors and glittering chandeliers. I caught her hand before she could shrink back. "Relax," I said softly. "You're safe here." She gave a half smile, one eyebrow raised. "Safe, right?" I led her through the grand foyer, past the golden elevators into my penthouse. The doors opened to a space filled with art I barely understood and furniture I had never had time to appreciate. The view of Lagos stretched endlessly, glittering like stars spilled across the earth. Adesela gasped. Her eyes were wide, taking in the space, the luxury, the sheer scale of it all. "You live like this?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. I nodded. "I do." She moved slowly, touching a sculpture, glancing at the paintings. "It's beautiful," she said, and for a moment I thought I might have heard awe in her voice. But then her expression hardened. "But it's empty. This isn't life. It's decoration." Her words struck me harder than I expected. I had never thought of my world as empty. I had always seen it as control, power, and achievement. But she was right. In here, surrounded by wealth, I had never truly lived. I gestured toward the dining table. "Dinner?" She shook her head. "I don't eat like this. I don't know how." "Then let me show you," I said. Dinner was awkward at first. The silverware felt foreign in her hands, the food heavy and rich compared to the plain meal she was used to. She kept her eyes down, speaking little, tasting cautiously. "Do you like it?" I asked. "It's strange," she said finally. "But it's not bad." I studied her as she spoke, seeing the tension in her shoulders, the way she resisted yet tried to adapt. It wasn't just about food or luxury, it was about her identity, her pride. I wanted to tell her she didn't have to hide, but words felt inadequate. We talked then, cautiously at first, about trivial things, street vendors, the weather, the chaos of Lagos traffic. And then, slowly, the conversation deepened. She spoke of her past, the relatives who had betrayed her, the nights she had slept under bridges, the small victories that kept her alive. Her voice wavered occasionally, but she never begged for sympathy. "You've been through so much," I said finally, unable to hide the awe in my voice. She looked at me, eyes hardening. "I didn't survive by being weak. And I won't be weak for anyone, not even you." I wanted to argue, to tell her she could let me in, but instead I reached across the table, letting my fingers brush hers. It was a small touch, but the electricity was immediate. Her eyes widened. "Obinna," she whispered. "I'm not here to hurt you," I said softly. "I just want to be here with you. If you let me." She looked away, struggling with her emotions. I could see the war within her, the desire to trust, the fear of betrayal, the pride that had kept her alive. "I can't, not yet," she said finally. "I'm not ready to be part of this world. And maybe I never will be." I nodded, though my heart ached. "Then I'll wait," I said quietly. "I'll wait as long as it takes. But I won't leave you. Not now. Not ever." She looked at me, then really looked, and I thought I saw something flicker in her eyes, a tiny spark of hope, or perhaps recognition that someone finally understood her worth. The night ended with her on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, staring out at the city lights. I watched her from the doorway, feeling a strange mixture of admiration, protectiveness, and an emotion I refused to name. I realized something terrifying. The walls I had built around myself, my disbelief in love, my cynicism, my control, were crumbling. And Adesela, with her fierce independence and unyielding spirit, was the one tearing them down. That night, Lagos seemed quieter than usual. Or maybe it was just me finally noticing the city through new eyes, eyes that were learning to care, to love, to hope. The next morning, Lagos roared to life, and I felt a heaviness in my chest I hadn't expected. Adesela had stayed at my penthouse overnight, and though she had eaten breakfast in silence, I could sense the storm behind her eyes. She wasn't used to my world, and I wasn't used to someone like her questioning it. I drove her through the city, intending to introduce her to a few of my trusted colleagues, people I believed she could eventually trust. But as soon as we entered the boardroom, I realized how impossible this would be. The stares were immediate. Whispers followed us like shadows. A wealthy socialite, wearing an expression sharp enough to cut glass, leaned over to another colleague. "Who brought this street girl here?" she hissed. Adesela's jaw tightened, her small hands clenching into fists at her sides. I saw her hesitation, her instinct to shrink into herself. "Ignore them," I said quietly, though I knew it was easier said than done. The socialite, sensing my attention, leaned back with a condescending smile. "Oh, I'm sure she's Very charming in her own way, she said, her tone dripping with mockery. Adesla froze for a moment, then turned sharply. I am not here to charm anyone, she said, her voice firm. I am here because he asked me. And I don't need your approval. The room went silent. Even I was taken aback by her courage. It was raw, unpolished, and utterly fearless. I placed a hand lightly on her shoulder. She's with me, I said, my voice low, warning. The socialite's lips pressed into a tight line, but she didn't argue further. She knew I was serious, and everyone who knew me knew I didn't back down. Later, I watched Adesla as she navigated my world. The office, the assistants, the endless stream of phone calls and decisions. She asked questions, sometimes blunt, sometimes innocent, and I answered honestly, realizing how little patience and compassion I had shown before in my life. But the tension wasn't just with colleagues. Outside the office, whispers traveled fast. Rumors about the billionaire's mysterious guest began circulating. Some speculated she was a gold digger. Others mocked her background. Adesla, ever resilient, brushed most of it off. But one day she came to me, her eyes filled with frustration and hurt. They're laughing at me, she said, voice trembling slightly. They think I'm a joke. That I don't belong. I pulled her close. Let them laugh, I said. They don't matter. You matter. She shook her head, stubborn even in vulnerability. I don't want pity, Obina. I don't want you defending me. I want to survive on my own, like I always have. Her words struck me deeply. I realized then that this wasn't just about protecting her. This was about respecting her pride, her independence, the very qualities that had drawn me to her in the first place. That evening she faced another challenge. A socialite luncheon was held at a luxury hotel, and I reluctantly invited her. I knew it would be uncomfortable, but I also wanted her to see that she didn't need to be intimidated by my world. The room fell silent as we entered. Glasses clinked softly and all eyes turned toward her. A few guests whispered behind hands, clearly attempting to undermine her. One woman approached with a forced smile. Oh, you must be the Oi girl, she said, her voice laced with condescension. Obina seems very fond of you. Adesla held her gaze, eyes blazing. I'm not here for your approval, she said, voice steady. I'm here because I was invited. I am not inferior to anyone. The woman blinked, surprised at the audacity, and stepped back, a faint flush of embarrassment on her cheeks. I watched from a distance, pride swelling in my chest. This was more than resilience, this was courage. And it was magnetic. Later, as we left the luncheon, I asked softly, Do you regret coming? No, she said firmly. But I don't belong here. And I won't ever forget who I am. Then I won't ask you to, I said, squeezing her hand. I just want you by my side, whatever that looks like. She smiled faintly, and I knew we were both treading dangerous territory. I was falling deeper, faster than I intended. And she was keeping me at arm's length, even as she allowed me glimpses into her heart. That night I couldn't sleep. I thought about her standing in the boardroom, unafraid, unbending, and I realized that the walls I had built around my heart were cracking faster than I could manage. I was falling in love, not just with her beauty, her defiance, or her resilience, but with her courage, her truth, and the fire that refused to be tamed. And I knew, with a clarity that terrified me, that nothing in my life had ever mattered more. The rain came again that night, drumming against the windows of my penthouse. I sat alone, nursing a glass of whiskey, my mind refusing to rest. Adesla had gone to her small room in the apartment I had arranged for her, not the penthouse, too extravagant, too exposing. She needed space, independence, and I wanted to respect that. Yet even as I tried to focus on work, her presence lingered like a ghost. I thought about her resilience, her fire, and the countless nights she must have spent hungry, wet, and alone. My chest ached. I realized with a cold clarity that I had never truly understood struggle, not until her. I closed my eyes and memories came flooding back. My own childhood was not easy, though no one on the streets would ever call it survival. My father had been cold, a man who measured love in achievements and wealth. My mother had left when I was too young to remember her warmth, leaving me with a void I filled with ambition and control. Love had seemed like a luxury, a distraction. I had built walls so high that even I couldn't climb over them. And now, Adesla was standing at the edge of those walls, daring me to feel. The next morning, I visited her at the small apartment. She was cooking a modest breakfast, her movements precise and careful. She didn't speak much, as if speaking too much might give me the wrong idea. You're quiet, I said gently, taking a seat at the small wooden table. I've always been quiet, she said, not looking up. It helps you survive. Talking too much can get you hurt. I nodded, understanding more than I could articulate. I see that, I said. You survive because of your courage and your caution. Both are rare. She glanced at me, suspicion and curiosity warring in her expression. And why do you care? I hesitated. Admitting my feelings now would be dangerous, yet holding them back felt like suffocating. Because I can't stop thinking about you, I said finally. And because I want to understand you, everything about you. Her lips pressed into a thin line, a mix of pride and fear. I've been hurt before, she said softly. People like me, people who have nothing, we trust and then it's gone. I can't let that happen again. I won't let that happen, I promised. I may not have lived on the streets, but I know what it is to be alone, to be abandoned. I understand more than you think. She studied me for a long moment, then looked away. The silence stretched, filled with unspoken truths and cautious hope. Later, she invited me to walk through the neighborhood where she had grown up. I watched her as she navigated the narrow alleyways, greeting neighbors, exchanging small smiles, and showing a side of herself she rarely revealed. It was humbling, seeing the strength it took to survive in that world, the skill in her independence, the dignity in her struggle. At one point, she stopped in front of a small, dilapidated building. This was my home, when I had one, she said quietly, her voice catching. Before it all went wrong. I didn't know what to say. I reached out, lightly touching her arm. You made it through, I said softly. That's more than most could do. She nodded, eyes shining with unshed tears. I did. I survived. And I will continue to survive no matter what. That night, I lay in my penthouse bed, haunted by the echoes of her courage and my own regrets. I realized that love, real love, was not about grand gestures or luxury, it was about recognizing another person's struggles, honoring their strength and choosing to stand beside them. And for the first time, I knew I was capable of it. The following weeks were tense. Adesela had begun adjusting to my world, but my colleagues and business rivals were far from welcoming. Some whispered behind closed doors about my street girl, mocking her origins. Others tried to use her as leverage, thinking I could be distracted, manipulated, or compromised. One afternoon, I received a call from my legal advisor. Sir, someone's leaked information about your companion. Social media is flooded with speculation. It's messy. I slammed the phone down. Messy? That was an understatement. I found Adesela in the garden, sitting quietly under a bougainvillea, reading a worn notebook she carried everywhere. They're attacking you again, I said, sitting beside her. This time, publicly. She didn't flinch. Instead, she closed her notebook, looked up at me and said firmly, let them. I'm not afraid. I've survived worse. And I will survive this too. Her courage was intoxicating, and yet my protective instincts flared. I wanted to shield her from every insult, every jab, but I also knew I couldn't strip away her independence. She had to fight. And she could. That evening, a formal gala was held for my company's biggest investors. Adesela attended, and the whispers began immediately. A socialite approached her with a venomous smile. Really, Obina? You brought her here? Adesela's eyes narrowed. I am here because I was invited. Not because I am supposed to impress anyone, she said. Her tone was sharp, unwavering. The room went silent. She was fearless, and for once I wasn't the one commanding attention. She was stealing the room with raw defiance. Later in private I confessed, you've impressed me today. Not because you're adapting, but because you stayed true to yourself. She smiled faintly, but her gaze was serious. And I will continue to stay true, no matter what world I'm in. Our bond deepened after that night. Every insult, every sneer, every obstacle only pushed us closer. But I knew the world wouldn't relent. Love alone couldn't protect her from all the forces converging around us. Then came the most dangerous confrontation yet. A former business rival, enraged by my success and my distraction, attempted to manipulate Adesela directly. He cornered her outside her apartment. You don't belong here. Leave him or I'll make sure your life on these streets is permanent, he hissed. She didn't falter. You can try but you'll fail, she said. And when he lunged, I was there. The confrontation ended with a police report and the rival's humiliation, but it solidified something crucial. Adesela had proven she could stand beside me as an equal. That night as we sat together I whispered, I've never met anyone like you. Never. And I can't imagine my life without you. Her head leaned on my shoulder and I realized that walls had finally fallen. Love, raw and powerful, was now inevitable. It started with a slight cough. At first I thought nothing of it. Adesela had always pushed herself, running errands, navigating the city, standing firm in a world that often seemed intent on breaking her. But by mid-morning, the cough had turned into fever, and her skin felt hot to the touch when I placed my hand on her forehead. I had never seen her truly sick. She was always so resilient, so self-reliant, that the thought of her lying weak and vulnerable was almost unbearable. I called my personal doctor immediately, insisting on a thorough examination, though she protested. "I don't need doctors," she said stubbornly, her voice weak but defiant. "I've been fine for years without them." "You've survived on the streets, yes," I said gently, trying not to sound impatient, "but that doesn't mean you can fight every illness alone. Not now." She glared at me with tired eyes. "You don't get it. I can't rely on anyone. I've never had that luxury. And I won't start now." I felt the tug of helplessness in my chest. She had survived everything the world had thrown at her, and yet here she was, letting herself falter, and I was powerless to stop it, except by standing beside her. That night, I stayed in the small apartment she had chosen instead of the penthouse. She insisted on independence even while sick, and I had agreed, respecting her pride. But I refused to sleep elsewhere. I wanted to be there to watch over her, to make sure she didn't succumb to the fever that was slowly weakening her. She slept fitfully, tossing and turning, her small body racked with shivers. I covered her with a blanket, adjusted the fan, and watched her chest rise and fall with each fragile breath. It was strange, almost terrifying, to see someone so strong reduced to fragility. She murmured in her sleep, "I don't want to be weak." I leaned closer. "You're not weak," I whispered. "Even now, even like this. Strength isn't only about standing tall. It's also about letting someone care when you can't do it alone." Her eyes fluttered open, sleepy and vulnerable, and for a moment, I saw the little girl she had been, the girl who had survived alone, who had faced betrayal and hunger and cold. "You really mean that?" she asked softly, voice trembling. "Yes," I said, my own voice catching in my throat. "I mean it with everything I am." She didn't respond immediately, just studied me with those dark, piercing eyes. I realized then that this was the first time she had ever allowed someone to truly see her weakness, and trust them not to exploit it. "You're different," she said finally. "Most people, they would use it. They would make me feel small. But you. I just want to be here for you," I said, leaning closer. Nothing more, nothing less. We stayed that way for hours, sitting silently in the dim light, my hand holding hers, letting the silence carry the words we couldn't speak. The city outside continued its chaotic hum, but in that small apartment there was peace. There was understanding. There was trust forming like glass, fragile but beautiful. The next morning she was weak but coherent. I insisted she see the doctor again. Reluctantly she agreed, and I accompanied her. The doctor was thorough, prescribing rest, fluids and medication. But the real healing, I realized, wouldn't come from medicine. It would come from letting her feel safe, letting her accept care without fear or shame. Back at the apartment, she sat on the small balcony, sunlight filtering through the curtains, illuminating her tired but resolute face. "I hate being like this," she said, wrapping her arms around her knees. "I hate feeling dependent." "You're not dependent," I said. "You're human. And humans need each other. Even the strongest ones." She looked at me, searching for a hint of condescension, but found none. Instead, she saw sincerity, and for the first time I think she allowed herself to feel it. Why do you care so much?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. I hesitated. It was a question I hadn't expected, and it demanded honesty. Because I've never met anyone like you. You've lived through everything, and yet you're still unbroken. And I can't stop thinking about you. I don't want to. I can't. Her eyes widened slightly, and I saw a flicker of vulnerability mixed with fear. "Love?" she whispered, almost afraid to name it. "Yes," I said, my voice firm. "Love. If that's what this is. Or something like it. I don't know yet. But I know I feel it. And I know I want to protect it, and you, no matter what." Tears welled in her eyes, and I felt a swell of emotion I hadn't anticipated. I took her hand gently, brushing away a stray lock of damp hair from her face. She leaned into my touch, hesitant but not resisting. The day passed slowly. I made her tea, reminded her to rest, and simply stayed by her side. It was strange, this quiet companionship, so different from the chaos of my boardrooms or the frenzy of the streets. Yet it was comforting, grounding, and terrifyingly intimate. That evening she spoke again, voice low but steady. I don't know if I can ever fully trust someone like you, she admitted. People who have what I've never had, they think they can fix everything with money or power. But you're different. You see me. I see you, I said softly. Every part of you. The proud, strong, stubborn parts. And the parts you hide from the world. I want all of it. I won't try to change you. I won't ask you to be anyone but yourself. She studied me, a mixture of disbelief, relief, and fear in her gaze. It scares me, she confessed. Letting someone in, trusting them. I've never done it before. I know, I said, my own chest tightening. But I'll be patient. I'll wait as long as it takes. And I won't leave you. Not now, not ever. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. Slowly, she leaned closer, resting her head against my shoulder. It was a small gesture, yet monumental, a sign that she was beginning to allow herself to be vulnerable, to let someone share her burden. The following days were a delicate balance. She continued her work in my neighborhood, helping the less fortunate, attending meetings with me and cautiously engaging with my world. Yet she retained her independence, never allowing herself to be defined by wealth or by my influence. Every night I stayed by her side, listening to her stories, sharing my own, and letting our silence speak volumes. The intimacy of these moments was more powerful than any declaration of love or grand gesture. It was real, tangible, and deeply human. One night, as Legos shimmered below us from the balcony, she whispered, I'm starting to trust you. A little. I smiled, feeling a warmth I hadn't known in years. That's all I ask, I said. A little. I'll take a little and I'll earn more with time. She laughed softly, the sound fragile but genuine. You're ridiculous, she said. I'm still not sure about all of this, but I feel safer with you than I ever have before. And in that moment I realized something vital. Love wasn't about grand declarations or extravagant gestures. It wasn't about wealth, power, or control. Love was about trust, vulnerability, and the courage to let someone in, despite the risks, despite the fear, despite everything. Adesla had taught me that. She had taught me that love was not about perfection or entitlement, it was about authenticity, resilience, and courage. And in teaching me, she had shown me the path to my own heart, to a place I had never allowed anyone to reach. That night, as the city slept, I held her close, feeling the rise and fall of her chest against mine. For the first time, I didn't feel the need to control, to protect, or to hide. For the first time, I understood that love, in its truest form, was not about guarding walls, it was about tearing them down. And for Adesla, I was willing to tear down every wall I had ever built. The morning sun filtered through the blinds, cutting sharp lines across my office floor. Today was not like any other day. The media had caught wind of Adesla's growing presence in my life, and rumors were spreading like wildfire. Some whispered about her past, others questioned her intentions, and a few outright mocked her origins. I refused to let it slide. Set up a press conference, I instructed my assistant, voice low but firm. And make sure everyone who matters, journalists, business partners, social media influencers, gets the invitation. This stops today. Adesla watched me with wide eyes, leaning back in the chair I had placed beside mine. You're serious? She asked softly. You want to publicly announce us? Yes, I said. Enough whispers. Enough doubt. People will see what I see. Who you are. What you mean to me. And I want the world to know it. She bit her lip, a nervous habit I had grown to recognize over the past months. Obina, I don't know if I'm ready for that. I've never been exposed like this before. You don't have to be ready, I said, taking her hand. I just need you beside me. That's all I ask. Her eyes softened, and after a long pause, she nodded. The press conference was held at the rooftop of my company building. The city sprawled endlessly below us. Lagos glimmered like a living jewel, the hum of traffic a distant heartbeat beneath our feet. Adesla stood beside me, her posture defiant, her head held high, despite the whispers, the stares, the cameras flashing around us. I cleared my throat, the microphone cold beneath my fingers. I took a deep breath and faced the sea of journalists, reporters, and curious onlookers. Good morning, I began, my voice steady. I've called this press conference for one simple reason. There has been speculation, gossip, and misinformation about a woman who has become very important in my life. Her name is Adesla. She is not just a companion, a friend, or a guest in my world. She is my equal. She is brave, resilient, and she deserves respect, dignity, and recognition. The cameras clicked, capturing every word. The journalists leaned in, sensing the gravity in my tone. I have known Adesla for several months, I continued, my gaze sweeping over her. During that time I have come to admire her strength, her intelligence, and her courage. She has faced hardship that most of us could never imagine. Yet, through it all, she has remained unbroken, defiant, and true to herself. And I love her. Gasps spread through the room. Some journalists whispered incredulously. Others jotted down notes furiously. Adesela stood still, her hand tightening around mine, eyes brimming with tears but unashamed. I will not allow anyone to belittle her, question her worth, or mock her past, I said, voice rising with conviction. Because she is not defined by her hardships. She is defined by her resilience, her courage, and the fire in her heart. And I will stand by her today and always. A moment of silence followed my declaration, the kind of silence that held weight, power, and inevitability. Then cameras clicked again, capturing Adesela's tearful smile, her quiet nod of understanding. Later, as the crowd dispersed, Adesela turned to me, her voice soft but firm. "You really meant that," she said. "Every word." "I did," I replied. "And I always will." We left the rooftop together, walking through the city streets now alive with whispers and speculation. People stared, some openly shocked, others curious, but Adesela held her head high, shoulders squared, proud of who she was and where she belonged. But the world would not relent. Not everyone admired our bond. Business rivals and opportunists saw this declaration as a weakness to exploit, attempting to plant doubt and stir controversy. A particularly cunning adversary, whose company I had recently acquired, sought to undermine me through legal threats and social media campaigns, focusing on Adesela's background and supposed incompatibility with me. I had anticipated attacks, but seeing them take aim at her, at the woman who had survived more than anyone should have, ignited a fierce protectiveness within me. That evening we were walking through a quiet street near her old neighborhood when one of the more aggressive social media journalists cornered her, camera in hand. "You're not really a part of his world," the man sneered. "Do you think he'll truly stand by you?" Adesela didn't flinch. She squared her shoulders, meeting his gaze with fire. "I am enough," she said, voice unwavering. "He loves me. And I stand by him as I always have, proud, unafraid, and true." The man faltered, clearly shocked by her audacity. He lowered the camera, muttering an apology before retreating. I felt my chest tighten, not with anger but with awe. Every day Adesela proved her strength, her courage, and her unyielding spirit. She didn't just survive in a harsh world, she thrived, commanding respect without bowing, standing tall without fear. Later that night we returned to the penthouse. Adesela collapsed into the couch, exhaustion finally catching up with her. I knelt beside her, brushing back a strand of damp hair from her forehead. "You've been through so much," I whispered. "And yet, you never ask for sympathy, never beg for protection. You've earned every bit of respect in this world, and I am proud to stand beside you." She reached for my hand, squeezing it gently. "I'm learning," she said softly, "that I can accept love without losing myself." Her words struck me. She had taught me so much: courage, resilience, independence, and now she was teaching me about trust, about opening my heart fully, without walls, without fear. The following days were a delicate dance between privacy and public scrutiny. Interviews, articles, and social media posts chronicled our story, often sensationalized, often critical. But through it all, Adesela remained steadfast. She didn't change, didn't cower, and didn't allow the world to define her. One afternoon, I found her on the balcony, staring out at the horizon. I joined her silently, letting the city's hum fill the space between us. "Do you regret being here?" I asked quietly. She shook her head. "No. But it's scary. The world judges, whispers, and attacks. I'm not used to this kind of exposure." "You don't have to be used to it," I said. "You just have to know that I am here. And no one can touch what we have together." She leaned her head against my chest and I wrapped my arms around her. The city stretched below us, endless, chaotic, and unforgiving. Yet up here in this fragile cocoon there was peace, love, and trust. The public declaration had been more than words. It had been a commitment, a promise that I would protect her, honor her, and love her regardless of what the world thought. And for Adesela, who had never truly trusted anyone, this was monumental. That night, as the lights of Lagos twinkled below, I realized something I had never admitted to anyone. I had never loved like this before. Not with my entire heart, not with vulnerability, and not with the willingness to risk everything. Adesela had changed me. She had shown me that love was not a weakness, but a strength beyond measure. She lifted her head, eyes glistening, and whispered, "Thank you for seeing me." I smiled, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. "No," I said softly. "Thank you for letting me in." For the first time I understood that love, true love, was about courage, vulnerability, and trust, and that it required both of us standing together, unafraid of the world and unafraid of ourselves. And in that moment I knew without doubt that nothing would ever be the same. The weeks after the public declaration were intense. Every day brought new challenges. Whispers, glances, subtle exclusions at social gatherings, and occasional outright confrontations from people who believed that love should be measured by wealth, status, or pedigree. But through it all, Adesela remained steadfast. She had faced worse in the streets, and in comparison, the whispers of the elite were mere background noise. I admired her more with each passing day. Her strength, her dignity, and her refusal to compromise her integrity were awe-inspiring. And yet, in private moments, I caught glimpses of the little girl who had survived nights under bridges, the young woman who had endured betrayal, hunger, and rejection. Those glimpses stirred a fierce protectiveness in me I had never known before. One afternoon I suggested we return to her old neighborhood. She hesitated. "It's not a place I usually revisit," she said softly, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "I want to go with you," I said. "Not as a wealthy man bringing charity. Not as someone trying to impress. I just want to see where you come from, to understand the life that made you who you are." After a long pause she nodded. We drove through narrow streets, past vendors calling out their wares, children playing soccer in makeshift alleys, and women carrying baskets on their heads. It was a world she had survived in, a world that had tested her courage and resilience at every turn. As we approached a small, dilapidated building, she stopped. "This was my home," she said, voice catching. "Before everything fell apart." I took her hand, squeezing gently. "You made it through," I said. "And you stand here now, stronger than anyone I know. That is worth more than any luxury or comfort the world can offer." Tears glistened in her eyes, and I realized how often the world had failed her, how rarely anyone had recognized her worth. I wanted to tell her she didn't need to prove anything, that she was enough, but I knew she already understood that. She just needed to hear it from someone she trusted, someone who had chosen to see her fully. We spent the afternoon walking through the neighborhood. Neighbors greeted her warmly, some offering small gifts, others sharing stories of her childhood. She laughed softly, a sound I had grown to treasure, and I felt the profound joy of witnessing her reconnect with her roots without shame or fear. Later that evening, back at the penthouse, I asked her to sit with me on the balcony. Lagos shimmered beneath us, a sea of lights stretching endlessly into the night. I took her hand in mine, heart pounding with a mix of fear, anticipation, and certainty. "Adesela," I began, voice low but steady, "there's something I've been meaning to ask you. Something I should have asked long ago, but I wanted to be sure that we could face the world together, sure that we could be brave enough to embrace this love fully." Her eyes widened slightly, searching mine for clues. I took a deep breath. "I have nothing left to hide. You are my life, my heart, and my future. Will you marry me?" For a long moment she said nothing. I held my breath, feeling the tension of months, of every struggle, every obstacle, every whispered doubt, condense into this single fragile moment. Then, slowly, tears filled her eyes. She covered her mouth with her hand, trying to contain the emotion she had carried for so long. "Yes," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Yes, Obinna. I will marry you." I felt a weight lift from my chest, a joy so overwhelming it left me momentarily breathless. I drew her into my arms, holding her as if to shield her from the entire world. Lagos, in all its chaos and noise, seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of us, connected by trust, love, and shared resilience. In the days that followed, we began planning our wedding, not the lavish, ostentatious affairs of the elite, but a celebration of family, love, and community. Adesela insisted on simplicity, on honoring the people who had shaped her life, the neighbors, friends, and mentors who had been there through thick and thin. I agreed, touched by her humility and her desire to share her life authentically. Preparations were not without challenges. Some members of my extended family and business circle questioned the union, suggesting that a girl from the streets could not possibly belong in our world. But Adesela faced them with unwavering dignity, responding not with anger but with grace and courage. "You will see," she told me one evening, her hand resting on mine as we reviewed the guest list. "I don't need anyone's approval. I just need to know that we are standing together. That's what matters." I nodded, my heart swelling with admiration. She had survived so much, and yet she still chose to love, to trust, and to dream. I realized then that she had given me more than love. She had given me courage, hope, and the ability to feel fully without fear. The wedding day arrived, a radiant morning in Lagos. The sky was a brilliant blue, and the warm sun bathed the city in gold. Friends, family, and neighbors gathered, a vibrant mix of cultures and experiences, all there to celebrate resilience, love, and the union of two lives forged by hardship and triumph. Adesla walked down the aisle with quiet confidence, her eyes locked on mine. Every step she took seemed to radiate strength, dignity, and the pride of a woman who had fought for every inch of her life. My heart ached with love and awe, and I knew in that moment that I would spend the rest of my life honoring her, protecting her, and cherishing her. When we stood together at the altar, I whispered, "You are my everything." She smiled, eyes glistening with tears. "And you are mine." The ceremony was simple yet profoundly moving. There were no grandiose displays of wealth, no opulent excesses. Instead, there was laughter, tears, and a deep, abiding sense of authenticity. Every vow, every promise was spoken from the heart, carrying the weight of shared struggle, survival, and unwavering trust. As we exchanged rings, I felt the enormity of what we had achieved. Love had conquered fear, class, and social expectation. Trust had bridged worlds that seemed impossibly distant. And resilience had brought us together, stronger than any challenge we could face. After the ceremony, we celebrated with family and friends. Neighbors from her old neighborhood shared stories of her courage and determination. My colleagues and business partners, initially skeptical, came to respect her integrity and the unwavering love we shared. The day was a testament not just to our union, but to the power of resilience, authenticity, and unconditional love. Later, as we stood alone on the balcony of the penthouse, watching Lagos twinkle beneath us, Adesla leaned against my chest. "You've changed me," I admitted, voice low. "Not just with love, but with everything. You've shown me what it means to be brave, to trust, and to live fully." She smiled faintly. "And you've changed me," she replied. "You've shown me that it's okay to let someone in. That love doesn't make me weak, it makes me stronger." We stood together in silence, letting the city hum beneath us, feeling the profound connection that had carried us through months of struggle, fear, and uncertainty. That night, as the stars shone above Lagos, I knew something undeniable: this was forever. Adesla had survived the streets, betrayal, hunger, and heartbreak. She had fought for every ounce of dignity and respect, refusing to compromise herself for the world's approval. And yet, she had allowed herself to love, to trust, and to believe in something greater than survival. And I, a man who had never believed in true love, had found it. In her courage, in her resilience, in her unwavering authenticity. She had shown me the meaning of family, the value of trust, and the transformative power of love. As we held each other that night, I made a silent vow: to honor her, to protect her, and to cherish her for all the days of my life. Lagos stretched endlessly before us, alive with chaos and beauty, but in that moment the city faded away. There was only us, two souls, resilient, fearless, and forever bound by love. The world could whisper, mock, and challenge us. The past could haunt, and the future could threaten. But we had something no adversity could touch. A bond forged through struggle, strengthened by courage, and sealed by the kind of love that changes lives, hearts, and destinies. And as we stood together, hands entwined, hearts beating in unison, I realized the truth I had once doubted. True love is not found in wealth, privilege, or circumstance. True love is found in courage, in trust, and in the willingness to stand beside someone, unafraid of the storms that may come. Adesla and I had survived storms of every kind. And now, together, we would face every sunrise, every challenge, and every joy, knowing that love in its purest, most resilient form would guide us forever.